Dragon Spirit: The New Legend is an auto-scrolling vertical shooter that has the player take control of a man-turned dragon to go fight the evil Galda, who's attempting to resurrect Zal, and has already kidnapped your sister. There's so much cool shit about this game. I mean, to start, it takes place after the arcade game, kind of, but don't worry, it gives you a synopsis if you sit through the title screen. Number 2, the story can take 2 directions based off of your actions at the beginning of the game. If you die as Amuro in the intro stage, then the sword beckons to Lace, who's Amuro's son, to go fight the Evil Master Galda. If you beat the intro stage, Amuro dies of a battle-related illness. Doesn't really specify what, but he dies either way. But rather than the sword calling for you, Lace takes up the sword on his own accord to go defeat Galda. Here's the catch. This also determines the game's difficulty, as the blue dragon takes a lot less abuse than the gold dragon, has twice as many stages, is slower, and less powerful. The gameplay is what you'd expect, but they have a really simple mechanic that takes on many roles that I haven't quite seen used in the way that this game does. It isn't anything crazy. You can fire attacks in the air or at the ground. Having 2 directions to attack in makes the game all the more interesting, especially since you can sometimes get a preemptive strike on some enemies before they take to the air. Power-ups you collect can add more heads, change your default shot, or change your color to add a variety of different abilities, including a spread W shot, a 3-way spread, and invincibility, and my favorite, the flame shot. After you beat a boss, you rescue a damsel in distress, and besides divulging some story, they can also directly impact the player at times, giving extra life, health, or even a hint to an upcoming stage. One other little thing about the stages before I go on is that the progression feels really good. I mean, you see a variety of sceneries, each one builds upon the last one, and there's enough to look at or to avoid, to keep the next several playthroughs visually interesting. The enemies in this game are surprisingly varied. They do a great job introducing new monsters almost every single level. There's some enemy recycling, but it only happens a few times. At the end of each stage, you fight a boss. Each one's pretty cool and unique in some way. They make pretty good use of the game's forward shot and ground shot mechanic, putting you in positions where sometimes you have to defend by attacking. If not, you can just be extremely agile and maneuver your way around projectiles and objects, but keep in mind, you're a pretty large target for the most part. One other thing, I do gripe about bosses a lot, but I think this game really knew what bosses meant to it. I mean, they're just roadblocks that have a set pattern or gimmick that can easily wreck your shit, but I mean, once you learn it, it's really not that bad. It's a nice break from the drone slaying, and you get to hear that satisfying explosion when they die. This game has some of the best NES music I've heard in my life, and I'm not exaggerating. Each track is perfectly set to the stage, each boss theme is just as intense as the last, and even then there are some moments when the game just gets rid of all sound and music just for the sake of building up tension. Something I noticed, and it just might be my interpretation, but the sounds are actually 50% quieter than the music, and I think that's just so it doesn't become really annoying or a distraction from the music. The exception to this is whenever you collect power-ups, but you'd want to hear those, that needs to be louder. Reason being is you kind of need to know what you picked up since the sound tells you what you got just in case you didn't see it. You know what? Let's just take a moment to appreciate some of this music. Seriously, it's just fantastic. There are a lot of things that I'd love to geek out about this game, but I'd rather you try it out and discover it for yourself. I cut about half the script and rewrote it to be vague just so I didn't spoil anything. If you've never played this before, I think that you'd be pleasantly surprised. Even if you don't like vertical shooters, it's still just an interesting concept. This game gets 12 human frames out of 12. Oh no.